For my flight simulation hardware, I like to use 6 separate devices. First, the Logitech Extreme 3D Pro Joystick. To supplement that, I use 3 Logitech Joy Pads. One here, and one here. I also like to use a Numeric keypad, and once in a while I still need the old basic keyboard. I found ways to map all of those buttons to useful functions inside Aces High, and it gives me a great deal of control.
This joystick is reviled and despised. It's inexpensive and it isn't very rugged. I find that under heavy use I have to replace it every couple of years. Some people have to replace it a lot faster than that, but it works well for me, and because it's so inexpensive, getting 2 years worth of use out of it still is good value. I like it. This joystick has a lot of buttons, and Aces High has logic that allows you to map or associate each button with a function of Aces High. Some of those button mappings are perfectly obvious. These two, illustrated now, show the trigger buttons that I associate with primary weapon and secondary weapon, respectively. I use this pair of buttons to raise and lower my flaps. I try to arrange things with some kind of logic. This pair of buttons I use for speeding up or slowing down. The upper one is called Ward Emergency Power. The lower one, Dive Brakes. Obviously, speeding up and slowing down is also associated with the main throttle control. Because this group of 4 buttons is arranged more or less like a diamond, if you look at the joystick on its edge, one kind of points forward and one kind of points back, and one more or less points left and one more or less points right. I realize that requires a little bit of imagination, but because of that basic logical arrangement, I use them for my trim controls. I use the one in front for trimming my nose down, the one in back for trimming my nose up, the one on the left nudges the nose of my airplane to the left, and the one on the right nudges the nose of my airplane to the right. Now, trim controls are kind of an advanced feature, and beginners won't use them much, but as you get more and more sophisticated with Aces High, you will want to use trim. They're especially useful in high-speed aircraft like the P-38 that like to go nose-diving into the ground. That up trim can save your life. I use this pair of buttons located at the back rear of the base for viewing modes. With Aces High, you have the option of seeing an interior view of your airplane inside the cockpit or an external view from outside. This pair of buttons is very useful for those 2 functions. At the top of the joystick is a switch that's shaped kind of like a Chinese coolie hat. You can put your thumb on it and push it forward, backward, left, or right. It's conveniently located, and it's tempting to use it for views. A lot of people use it for looking forward, backward, left, or right. But I don't like that because there's no obvious way to look up or down, and that's really important. So I use my left hand on my Numeric keypad for looking forward, backward, left, right, up, down, and at all angles. We'll talk about that later. This hat switch can be used for other things, and it gives me a big advantage in battle. When I push it forward, I get what Aces High calls a gunnery zoom. It's kind of a telescopic sight. My eyesight zooms way in. When that gunnery zoom is active, I can push the hat switch left or right to zoom my view out or in. By holding it to the right, I can zoom way in and see in great detail what's directly in front of my guns. Pushing it to the left lets me zoom back out again. So I'm constantly using this hat switch to get that gunnery view on or off, and when in gunnery view, to zoom in and out for greater or lesser detail. It really helps with targeting and shooting. The 4th and final position of that hat switch is when I push it back. Now, this one's a little less obvious, but as I became more advanced, I found that I like to use what Aces High calls combat trim. Now, beginners won't mess with this, and you won't need to use it, but as you become more sophisticated, you'll find it's handy to map combat trim to a convenient button. I do it here. When I press it backward, my airplane automatically tries to set all the trim tabs for neutral flight, and it makes my joystick a little easier to control. This picture then shows all of the buttons of my joystick and the way I have them mapped. I find this combination really convenient. I can get easy access to my weapons, my flaps, my throttles, rudder, aileron, elevator, trim controls, view modes, targeting, zoom, just everything is really, really convenient. Here's a little picture of my Numeric keypad. As I said, I use it for my view keys. I use it for other things too, but mostly it's for viewing. This button at the bottom is the one I use for looking backward, and it's convenient because there's a backward pointing arrow on it. I use the numeric 8 key to look forward because it has a forward-looking button. The num4 button is used for looking left, and of course it has a left-pointing arrow. To look right, I use the num6 button. It has a button that points to the right. Centered between all of those is the 5 button, and I use it for looking straight up. And I can combine that with the other keys to look forward and up, or back and up, etc. The other buttons in the corners, 7, 9, 1, and 3, help me look in the corresponding diagonal direction. Straight above all of those is the slash key. I use that for looking down, and I can combine that with looking forward and down, or left and down, right and down, etc. It's commonplace to hold down 2 of these buttons at once. Also on my numeric keypad, I have convenient buttons for managing my clipboard. That's a special feature of Aces High that lets you configure things or look at a map. I can also check the status of fuel, open and close bomb bay doors, or select my secondary weapon. So this picture shows the joystick and the numeric keypad, and those are the most basic controls. For beginners and for many, many folks, this is all the controls you'll ever need, and this combination is very inexpensive. I don't think there's any better value in any way to get powerful controls for Aces High than to buy an inexpensive USB numeric keypad and this Logitech Extreme 3D Pro joystick, and use them as I've mapped them here and shown you how to do it. You can put some other things on, and I'll continue to show you the other controllers that I use, but these are the basics, and the others are just kind of like extras. Aces High allows you to have several joysticks or joypads. You can just keep plugging them in, and each time you do, it adds more buttons that you can map. I bought an inexpensive joypad. This came from Logitech, cost about $10 in the United States, and I mounted it near the right side of my cockpit desk, just kind of lashed it to a pole there, and I use it to control things that relate to the performance of my computer, or the status reports that my computer will give me about the status of my airplane. It's really handy, and anytime I need to tweak the video graphic display or the icons or get the status of my computer, I punch one of these buttons. It works really well. I mount another joypad right in front of my numeric keypad. In fact, I actually lash the cables together for tidy appearance. This one I use for communication-related things. My microphone controls are here, and also the various radio tuning and text buffer controls. Anything to do with communication can be conveniently mapped to the buttons on this little joypad. Finally, the last bit of hardware is a third joypad that I've lashed to the left side of my desk, and I map on it flight surface and engine controls that are not urgent. The most urgent controls are on my joystick, but other things like raising and lowering landing gear, wheel brakes, autopilot climb, autopilot level, engine select, engine starting and stopping, things that I don't have to mess with too much in combat, but that I can press when I have a little bit of a calm moment, are mapped to this joypad. The combination is just awesome. This thing is inexpensive, it's convenient, it's logical, it's easy to figure out. I'm able to teach this to beginners without a lot of trouble, and I actually labeled all those buttons either with a permanent magic marker or with white marking ink, and it just really gives me big advantages in battle to have buttons for everything. There are no combination buttons. I don't have to hold two buttons down. There's no mode switching, anything like that. It just really works great.